Welcome back, movie fans, to another episode of Hollow Victories Out of the Ring. I'm your host, Matt Presents, joined as always by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Michael. What's up? Why are we so unenthusiastic this intro?
I don't know. It's been a little while since we've done an Out of the Ring. I guess not that long, but I think the last one we recorded was in September.
It's not like a monthly thing. Hollow Victories. Hollow Victories always feels a little spaced out because it's not like a weekly podcast. It's every month we do it. So this one's not even every month. It's every 3 months. Sometimes maybe 2 months in a row. But
I don't know, we're kind of good about we were kind of good about every other month there for a while, but now it's just kind of it's always kind of just been a podcast we do whenever we have a good idea for it.
Yeah, I don't think we need to force it. The last few things that what were we gonna put up for the mean one and Pooh, Blood and Honey,
Oh, we could have done the original Winnie the Pooh. Or the Disney one, at least.
I guess, but I feel like you'd almost want to do a horror movie, because I feel like that was more of a slasher theme than anything. But then it's there isn't a good horror movie based on a children's property. At least I don't think there is.
We could have done Mumsy, Nanny, Sonny, and Girly, which is an old British horror film that very much pulls from the aesthetics of something like Winnie the Pooh, but...
Oh,
I don't know, it'd be kind of a random thing to just pick out of a hat. Today, on the other hand, we're looking at Wreck-It Ralph, because we were about to do Wreck-It Ralph 2 versus Space Jam 2, and we already talked about Space Jam. We did a matchup of that and Looney Tunes Back in Action, so I figure we'll complete the whole set. We'll do Wreck-It Ralph on Out of the Ring.
Only one worthy to be on the more positive show of the four. I think Space Jam could go on the show for just it excels at being what it needed to be.
Yeah, I think had we not already done a Space Jam episode, I think Space Jam would have been completely acceptable to talk about on Out of the Ring. But because even that one we kind of I said I was bending the rules a little just because I really wanted to do that matchup.
It worked too, because a lot of people say Space Jam is a stupid movie. It's not like it's this universally loved movie. It has a good fan base, but it is not universally loved.
I mean, even I would kind of insist it's not a particularly good movie. Entertaining, sure, but it's pretty bad in a lot of ways. There are more positive aspects to it, though. I'll give it a little credit.
What I'll say about Space Jam, though, is it's just such a bizarre movie that I feel like if you made changes to it, it would just make it worse, because I think it is what it needs to be. The only thing in that movie that I think could be taken out and it would make it better is when they try to do those, nightmare fuel things with the live-action characters in the cartoon world. Those are... I guess it's interesting, it's something to talk about, but I do not enjoy looking at that. Especially the fucking inflation with Newman.
No, those are horrifying.
So that's the one thing in that movie I won't defend at all. Everything else, I don't know. It was very well animated. It had a really good soundtrack. But it's you're either gonna watch it and enjoy it. It's like a... I don't know. It's kind of like a Flash Gordon. You know it's bad, but you love it.
I don't know, but Flash Gordon I'd probably be more inclined to defend. I get it. I understand the comparison, but I'd defend Flash Gordon a little more than I would Space Jam.
I would too, but I think it's kind of just it's just one of those movies,
I get you.
Because I feel like Space Jam was semi self-aware too. Probably not as self-aware as Flash Gordon, but I think at the end of the day, they knew it was kind of a dumb movie.
I feel like they didn't understand the Looney Tunes that well.
Yeah.
Is my big issue with it.
Fair.
But I think it's an interesting movie. But that's not the movie we're here to talk about today. Today we're going to talk about Disney's Wreck-It Ralph from 2012.
2012 or 2011?
From 2012.
It's been 12 years since I've seen it.
It's here I said this to you right before we started recording. I think I've like seen it on TV, but only like parts of it. I wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and watch all of Wreck-It Ralph now. So, but I think I've seen it like once on television since it came out, which is weird because I did enjoy this film. I do like this film. Wreck-It Ralph, just on the small off chance you haven't seen this movie, this might be like E.T.'s probably like a more popular movie, but I bet more people our age have seen Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
Honestly. So this is one of the more popular things we've talked about. Just in case you haven't seen it, this is the story of Wreck-It Ralph, the bad guy in the video game Fix-It Felix Jr., who's upset with always being mistreated and always being seen as like the bad guy. So he sets out to get himself a medal. He finds one in Hero's Duty, but then he gets attacked by an alien bug and it sends them flying off to Sugar Rush, a sugar-themed kart racer, where he begins interacting with a girl named Penelope, who's a glitch that's trying to like become one of the racers in the game. And so they sort of form a bond over the course of the movie, but of course the king in Sugar Rush, King Candy, doesn't want them to do that. Eventually it's revealed that King Candy is... spoilers, we're getting into spoilers here. King Candy is Turbo, a character from an old racing game who, like, broke his game and another game by trying to game hop. He somehow game hopped once again and took over Candy Rush when it came in. And meanwhile, the alien Ralph has brought with him from Hero's Duty is, like, mutating and destroying Sugar Rush. And it's sort of up to Wreck-It Ralph to save the day.
Yeah.
Michael, what do you think of Wreck-It Ralph?
I told you before we started watching this, back when I watched it when it like first came out, I was kind of indifferent to it. Like, I didn't dislike it, but my biggest gripe with it was in the trailer. I felt like we got all of the video game character appearances. There may have been a few that weren't in the trailer, but they really shoved those into the trailers. There wasn't much new stuff in the movie at that point. But I will say it fits well with the themes of the Hall of Victories episode we're going to do. I think we've kind of learned what happens when you have too much of that. Back then, maybe we didn't quite as much because those types of movies weren't really a thing yet.
Yeah.
Let's point at everything we own. So now looking back, I really appreciate how much restraint this movie had. They had access to all these IPs, and they're like, no, we're just going to throw them in scenes where it makes sense to have them, and we're going to focus on our own characters and story, and I like it more. I like it more now. I think that it's a movie that does a lot of, like, your standard Disney tropes, but it finds a way to justify every single one of them. Like, you know, they weren't too big on the villain reveals yet, like the surprise villain reveals. I say Frozen and Onward is when that started to get obnoxious, but it's not really a reveal about him being a villain. Like, they make him, King Candy, a villain throughout the whole movie. When he's, like, showing empathy, saying, like, oh, I'm doing it to save her, I don't think you're supposed to believe him. I don't think that the movie's trying to trick you with that. I think he's been acting like a scumbag the whole movie. You know he's up to something, you just don't know what yet. The Turbo part is the reveal, and that's a cool reveal. Even if you saw it coming, the way they revealed is cool. Like, the glitching in and out between the two characters, it's like a really creepy backstory. I love the way that they went about it. It's like a fucking creepypasta. It's like it's a really cool reveal. They have a lot of fun with that. There's the misunderstanding that separates the characters, but they, like, him saying that to Ralph in that scene doesn't make you think King Candy is a good person, but it does make you, it does help you understand why Ralph does what he does. And I like when they get back together, it's just, he just has to call himself an idiot, say he fucked up, and they're fine, you know? Yeah. I think that it's doing a lot of the same tropes that I normally don't want to see in these movies that a lot of people tend to have an issue with, but I think it executes each of them really well. Like, it's a rare example where it's like, okay, yeah, you these tropes are a trope for a reason. You can use them, just don't do the same shit that everyone else does. And I think this movie did a good job separating it from other movies. I think it's a very well told story.
Yeah, weirdly, I kind of feel like this film feels more like a DreamWorks movie than a Disney movie. So some of that is, like, all of the video game characters they crammed in there, because that does feel Disney, and we are going to be seeing this soon. Disney, I feel like, would be more inclined to like include their characters in the story, but it's all these like famous video game characters, and that kind of feels like a DreamWorks move. Plus, like, this one feels like it gets kind of dark in places,
Yeah.
like in ways that Disney movies do not typically, like with like the aliens and the soldiers and stuff. And there's so many replacement cuss words in this. I was honestly laughing at like all the times they like clearly almost say a cuss.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I think that too, like, just going off like the darkness of it, like, the Turbo backstory is kind of creepy the way they present it. And they do it with like the sprites too, with like the limited reaction, so it's kind of an uncanny scene where you see his like sprite come on the screen trying to invade that game, like the backstory where it's implied that he's dead, but then he actually does die at the end of the movie, and it's like, it kind of reminds me of like the Disney Renaissance where they were willing to be a little bit more morbid with the deaths. Not quite like Scar getting ripped apart or the guy in Tarzan hanging himself, but like he is burned alive. You know, he dies in a very horrific way, but pretty quick compared to the other two. But
Weirdly, he honestly, he gets eaten by the bug. Because they just say, like, oh, the bug becomes the thing that it eats. So arguably, I would say Turbo gets eaten by the bug, and then the bug becomes Turbo, and then the bug gets burned alive.
It's a very interesting climax though, and I love how they keep building on King Candy. Like the Turbo, because yeah, you're right, the Turbo reveal wasn't the last they had of him. It is kind of like a big final boss in a game, you know. Like they keep building on it, and the bug isn't just a random thing thrown in. The bug is like a conflict throughout the entire movie. Like it's all very clever.
Yeah, like, it's a part of the movie that I honestly forgot about. I forgot the bugs were even in it, but like, no, they are like a big important part of the story. It is kind of nice to see a movie that has like all these moving parts that like coalesces at the end.
Right.
Right? Like I think they have a lot of stuff going on, but I think all of it adds together. I think all of it belongs here.
I agree. It is. Yeah, that's what. I really just think it's a really well written script, and that's
yeah.
I think it has its focus in the right place.
I really like this movie. I think this is some of Disney's better output from the 2010s. I don't think it's like a perfect movie. I don't think it's the greatest thing they've done. But I mean, like, 2010s Disney was kind of odd, because I would honestly say, like, most of their output from that era was not very good, but they were absolutely capable of making a good movie. They did put out some good movies in that time, so it's just like they were rare, but they happened. I like Zootopia, I like Moana.
No, it's kind of interesting. You mentioned saying it's kind of like it felt like a DreamWorks movie to you. Something that I heard a lot of people saying around the time that this movie was coming out is it kind of reminded them more of something that Pixar would have put out. And it was kind of like Pixar was making the Disney movie with Brave, because that felt more like their Disney. And Disney was making the Pixar movie. And I think the DreamWorks comparison works too. But yeah, Wreck-It Ralph does feel closer to something that Pixar would put out than Disney. Outside of there being
I see that.
Except for like the warrior character kind of having that like design that, like, you know, all of the Disney princesses have. She has like the same eyes, the same like figure. That's like you could make edits to her to make her look like Elsa, you know?
Yeah, no, I see the Pixar comparison. It's sort of Toy Story but for video games.
Right. I do really like some of the animation details, like the skipping frames for a lot of the video game characters. I will say it's a little weird that they do it for Felix, they do it for all the other characters too. They don't do it for Ralph, and it's kind of like, part of me understands that for two reasons. One, it could be them saying, like, I don't know, maybe they're making some sort of comment on his personality, like there's more to it than the other characters. Maybe that's a stretch. But another thing is just like people aren't going to want to look at that the entire movie. I think it could work. I think
even Felix is kind of like smoothly animated in parts. He'll do like the jump frames which Ralph tends not to, but he is animated more smoothly than, like, the Nice Landers.
Yeah, honestly, once he's interacting with the one, I forget her name. It's you know who I'm talking about though, like the
Yeah, Jane
sergeant.
Lynch.
Yeah, Jane Lynch. I mean, it kind of looks like her too. Once he's with Jane Lynch, I can't really recall any like that many times where they're doing the skip and frame animation. I think the only critique I have, and it's like nitpick. It's like like in terms of the animation, is I wish Felix would look more like Mario or Tapper, because they kind of like get a lot of the proportions right like that, but they with the eyes and everything, they're still going for like those are their Disney eyes, and I feel like they avoided that with Ralph. I feel like with Ralph, he looks very unique in this movie. With him, it's like the Tapper character in this movie, like the bartender, was a perfect example. I think they should have made him look a little bit more like that, because I think that just has so much more personality to it. Like, okay, we're not going to have Mario in the movie, but we are going to have a design that's very inspired by Mario. I wish they would have just been okay with making him look a little goofier, especially because I think it would make him hooking up with the one girl a lot funnier. but
Yeah.
but that's a nitpick, because it's like the design isn't bad, and it's not like, and it's just like one design. It's one design that I kind of wish they would have altered a bit. Character design wise, this movie, they had a lot of fun with it. King Candy has a great design. Turbo looks really creepy.
I really like everything about King Candy. He feels like a throwback to, like, old school cartoons.
Yeah.
He's got a very, like, Tigger-like voice. His voice sounds like Tigger. He does a lot of, like, classic animation gags.
Right.
You wouldn't hit a guy with glasses.
Oh my god, that and the hero's duty were in like so many of the fucking TV spots for the movie. Like it would just I heard it over and over and over. That's something that's gone forever now, because I don't like, not only do I not watch like Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, but I don't have siblings who do. So I'm not seeing those like 30-second commercials. I don't even know if they still do that. That's weird. Like I'm sure they do, but I have no idea what television is like now.
That feels like a weird thing about movies nowadays, is people are always like, oh, I never saw any advertising for this movie, but it's like, I don't really watch cable.
Yeah.
And like, weirdly, I don't see a lot of trailers online. I don't see a lot of trailers like on YouTube videos and stuff. I do occasionally, it happens, but usually it's for like smaller stuff, like, it feels like the bigger studios are like, oh, well, we're above advertising on YouTube, but as a result, no one sees the ads.
Every single time I watch cable on Cartoon, every time I watch Cartoon Network, it goes to commercials. It's just a man sitting in a chair staring at me, taking notes. Nobody says anything because nobody else is watching it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other characters have good designs too. Vanellope, I think, has like a fun design. I mean, I think Candy Rush, Sugar Rush is like a good looking game.
Yeah, I wonder, did they ever do like a video game time with that? They had like a flash game for Wreck-It Ralph, where you could actually play Wreck-It Ralph. You could play a full Fix-It Felix. You could play that.
Yeah. I know Ralph was in, like, one of the Sonic racing games. I don't know if they did, like, a Sugar Rush level to tie in with that.
They are very buddy-buddy with Sonic. Honestly, Sonic's been in 3 fucking Disney movies now. Maybe more if I thought about it. Because he was in Chip and Dale as well.
Sonic, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll count Ugly
That's
Sonic.
Ugly Sonic.
I'd say out of the 6 Sonic movies, I'll rank Wreck-It Ralph in second place. First place is still the OVA, but that's not objective. It's better than Sonic 2. Wreck-It Ralph 2 is probably the worst Sonic movie. They do give Sonic more lines in the sequel. He does have more. He's not in a lot of it, but he does have more presence. I think they give him a whole 2 lines in that movie.
Yeah, he has like 1 line in this movie,
and he's on a fucking screen. He's not even there.
Like you see him walking around a few times, but like you don't get to hear him say anything, except for like the one pre-recorded PSA he did. Apparently,
you see him running around. He's at the wedding at the end. He's at the party. His picture is on the wall in like the Tappers area, along with Tails and Eggman.
Eggman is at the evil con at the beginning.
Yeah, you get a good look at him. He didn't actually speak because none of his voice actor, he wasn't credited, so his lips are moving, but he's not actually speaking. Disney couldn't be Chads and let Mike Pollock come and do some voicing for good old Eggman. It's cool that they got Bowser, especially like they didn't get Mario, but at least they got a Mario character.
Yeah. The one other thing it kind of reminds me of is like Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yeah.
Where they like reached out to other animation studios and were like, "Oh, let us use your characters." And much like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I think they do a pretty good job knowing when to throw those characters in.
Yeah. Advertising was a little bit misleading. There's like fucking, not only is there a Wreck-It Ralph poster that has Sonic on it, like he's one of like the 6 characters on it, but there's a poster where he is like the only character on it. And it's just like, you are a fucking liar, Disney. But I think they did that for a couple of the game characters. Like I think they have one for Q*bert too, who, to be fair, has a more prominent role, but
Yeah, I would say Q*bert is more important.
he's definitely not like a major character, but he does have some screen time.
Letterboxd, if you're a Letterboxd patron, they let you change the poster, and I found the poster that it says Wreck-It Ralph, it's got Sonic in the center, it's got Zangief, and it's got Jane Lynch's character. It's like, why this lineup? It's not even 3 popular game characters. It's 2 popular game characters and 1 character from the movie.
Right. It is a good Sonic model. I like it though. He's cool looking on that one. What else? There's like, what are some other like good fun little game cameos in this? Like there's a lot of references to Mario Kart and Sugar Rush, like Mario Kart specifically. Like they have like a road that looks like Rainbow Road. They have the one person who like clearly held the A button too long, or whatever you do to accelerate. I forget because I'm not holding the controller. Whatever you do to accelerate, the one person who holds it too long in their car fucks up at the start. Did Mario Kart invent the items? I don't know if Mario Kart was the first one to do that.
It might have been. Chris would be able to answer that better than I could.
Right. No, we should have had Chris on this episode. Do we want to talk about casting at all?
I mean, here's the thing, like, most of these people were in the sequel.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sure we'll talk about them in the Victories. I will say this, though, I'm not to throw too much shade. Sarah Silverman annoyed the shit out of me in the sequel. Like, I mean, her voice, I just could not stand it in that movie. And I remember thinking, like, okay, this is probably not just the sequel. This is probably just, like, I don't like her voice. Watching this movie, she was fine in this. I liked her in this. I think it's the sequel. I don't know if it's that she had a harder time doing the voice. I don't know if it's they pitched it up at all. I don't know if it's just they wrote a more obnoxious character in the sequel. Because they're kind of on the line of making her too annoying in this movie. They're, like, really pushing the line there, but I think that they made her likable enough to where she didn't annoy me. But there's like, she probably annoyed some people. I'll say that, because she's kind of a character who's designed to be annoying. You just don't want to like cross the line too much, and I don't think this one does. I think the sequel does.
Yeah, I get that. Oh shit! Yeah, you know what? It's Roger Craig Smith Sonic. That means you've met one of the voice actors in this movie.
That's true. Met Roger Craig Smith. This was pretty early for him because I think 2011 or 2010 was his first game as Sonic. And this movie was probably being made right around that time, so yeah, it would have been Jason Griffith if the movie was made like a year sooner. But no, Roger got to do a Disney movie, and that's kind of neat. I mean, he's done some notable voice work, so I guess it's not that much surprising. Go ahead.
The only person I would say is worth mentioning, because they will probably not come up when we talk about the sequel, is Alan Tudyk, who plays King Candy, and again, I think does a great job.
Oh yeah, he does great. And honest to God, you might want to talk about Jane Lynch and whoever voiced Felix's character, because they're in the sequel, but it almost, I'm gonna say this too. It almost seems. Tell me if you agree with me when you watch it. Okay. We'll come back to
Okay.
this. It almost seems like they're about to do something with them. It almost seems like, okay, we have their plot for this movie down, and then they just don't bring it back up. They just it's like it didn't happen. I think that they acknowledge it at the very end of the movie in a scene, but it's like you don't see any of it happen. They are barely in the second movie. I was surprised by that when I watched the sequel. I thought that they were going to be like, maybe not as I get it. It's a sequel. You have new characters to focus on, but I'm surprised how much they got left out of the sequel.
This movie was written by one of the guys who made Bring Me the Head of Charlie Brown.
Oh boy.
Just like an old indie animation of like Charlie Brown just like killing his friends.
Interesting.
Circulated in like the 80s, 90s.
Jack McBrayer, that's the... Oh, I know this guy. He's like on 30 Rock.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, he's like a fairly well-known actor. Good casting for both of those characters.
Yeah, I think they're both really good. Like I said, we might mention them in the Hall of Victories episode. They're not in a ton of that.
I think they have a nice relationship in this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's it's very silly, but I buy it. I love how much her tragic backstory is painted as a joke too. Like it's a relationship that is clearly being played for a laugh, but you also just fully accept it.
It kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
In the context of they build to it well. I have seen movies that like try to shove in romances that are like way less convincing than this.
Yeah. They get a decent amount of screen time together.
I don't know that I have much else to say about this film, do you?
Nothing else is coming to mind right now. Just yeah. I really like it. I feel like it'll come up a lot in the Hall of Victories episode because we'll be talking about what worked and what didn't work.
Yeah, that is part of the reason I wanted to revisit this, is just because like I remembered liking Wreck-It Ralph, and I'm like, okay, let's just like jog my memory before we go into the terrible one and talk about how it fails to do everything that this movie did.
I'll say this too, like I watched the sequel a few years ago, and I was not super into it, but I also was like, it's not the worst thing ever. It's not as bad as people are making it out to be. It's like a 5 out of 10. Revisiting this movie, I was even thinking maybe I'll even appreciate it more going into it again, because it's like, okay, now the characters are fresh in my mind, so I like these characters. It'll be nice to see it again. Without saying too much, I think that revisiting this movie is actually going to make me like it less. I think I went into that sequel without the movie fresh in my mind, because I did not rewatch it to watch the sequel. And I think now that it's fresh in my mind, I am seeing a lot of the issues that people have with it. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, this is undoing some of what the first movie did. This is undoing kind of a lot of it.
I am speaking here as someone who has never seen Wreck-It Ralph 2 or Space Jam 2. I remember, like, sometime after Wreck-It Ralph had come out, I was thinking to myself, like, what's a movie I would actually like to see a sequel from? And I went, oh, Wreck-It Ralph. Wreck-It Ralph would make a great sequel. So there's a part of me that almost thinks, like, Wreck-It Ralph 2 has the disadvantage here, because I never had any expectations for Space Jam 2. There was no world where Space Jam 2 was gonna be any good. I wanted a Wreck-It Ralph 2. I wanted them to make a Wreck-It Ralph 2. And instead we got crap. We got something no one likes. Maybe I'll find the movie to be more watchable than Space. I am gonna evaluate these like on their own terms.
Yeah.
But I just going into it before we've watched either of them, I feel like Wreck-It Ralph 2 has a disadvantage, has like a natural disadvantage.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's disappointing that it was clear that some of the people who worked on this movie going on to the sequel had a clear vision, because they started talking about ideas they had for the sequel. And I think the second that it being about the internet was brought into the mix is the second it was like out of their hands. Because it was a terrible idea. It was a terrible fucking idea. Just from the get-go. I think, honest to God, like, out of all people, I think Doug Walker put it well. Where he said that you can't do a Disney movie about the internet. Or if you're going to, you have to have some balls. Because, like, it's the fucking internet. You can't do a PG movie about the internet like that. It's not gonna work. They're trying to show all this stuff. They show Ralph. There's a part in the movie where they show Ralph, like, reading mean comments. And it's like, that is not how people would be responding to this. It is like, you do... I don't even know if it's that they don't understand the internet as much as they refuse to show what the internet is like in a Disney movie. But then why are you making a movie about the internet? And it's because that was the easiest way that they could show off all of their properties. Because it's like, oh, they can go to the Disney website. And I think that's literally the only reason they wanted to do the internet. I think that the Disney properties replaced the video game character cameos.
Yeah, but we'll talk about that one when we get to it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That video is probably already out by the time this video comes out. I tend to be pretty bad about editing the Out of the Rings. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get through those movies.
Maybe who knows? Maybe I'll jump into that one and have a more positive experience with it. I fucking doubt it. Go ahead.
Anything else to say about Wreck-It Ralph 1?
No, I liked it more this time. Good movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one. It's a good movie. I don't think it's like the greatest movie ever or anything, but it's solid, worth watching. I had a good time with it. I'll probably come back to it.
I probably wouldn't put it in my top 10 Disney movies, but I mean, top 20 is possible.
Yeah, maybe. I will say I have the Blu-ray of this, and this is kind of the movie that sold me on Blu-rays, because when you pause the movie, it starts playing this fun, like, did you know reel. It's honestly like an exploration of all the, like, video game Easter eggs in the movie. It's mostly what it is, but I'm like, oh, that's a cool feature. When you pause the Blu-ray, it plays this special thing. This is the only Blu-ray that does that. I have never seen another Blu-ray do that. Maybe like one other Disney movie from around the time did it. Maybe like Frozen has that on its Blu-ray, but as far as I'm aware, this is the only movie that plays like a behind-the-scenes reel when you pause it. Which is weird. That's a feature more movies should include.
Right.
Although it does make it annoying if you're like trying to pause at the 0-second mark so you can sync up your viewing of the film. Oh, anyways, if you don't have anything else to say, then I think we can wrap this one up.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, Wreck-It Ralph. It was a good movie. Until next time, for my co-host Mackle Shadackle, I'm Matt Presents. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace.